everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the October My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. And if you have been following me on my channel, you may know that I have been trying to catch up on some older videos, and this is one of them. I filmed the layout process, but then I didn't have a chance to edit and voice over the video, so now I'm going back to all those videos and I'm trying to get them up on my channel for you. So I started off by cutting some 1-inch strips of paper. The paper that I'm using is from the 49 and Market Art Options Alina collection, another one of the gorgeous 49 and Market collections that they have come out with lately. I love the teals and the peaches in this collection. So I'm using 4 strips of paper, 2 that are not cut and 2 that have 45-degree angles cut in the corners, and I layer them on top of each other to make a little frame. And I'm going to layer this pattern paper on top of that frame. It's cut slightly smaller just to leave a small blue mat around the outside of the layout. I love to use the Distress Oxides to ink the edges of different elements on my layouts. I don't think there's a true teal among the Distress Oxide colors. There's a turquoise, which is Mermaid Lagoon, and then there's this new color, which is called Uncharted Mariner, but none of them are the exact teal color that I needed, but this color was close enough to work. I inked the edges of all of those strips of paper on the background and then around the outside of the background paper. Now I'm attaching that background paper down to the mat. I'm using ATG adhesive, and I put a decent amount on just to make sure that everything stays attached together. And the measurement of that blue mat around the outside of the layout is about 1/4 inch. I selected a number of embellishments from the kit that I thought would look nice on this layout. I'm using a number of die cut and laser cut and fussy cut flowers and butterflies. For the peach elements, I'm using abandoned coral, and for the elements that have more blue in them, I'm again using the Uncharted Mariner and inking the edges of all of them. I don't end up using every one of these pieces, but I do use the majority of them on this layout. To ink some of the green elements, I also use the Uncharted Mariner just because that's closer in color than the abandoned coral. And I didn't want to introduce too many colors to ink the edges. On the background paper, I did a whole bunch of stitching. There were numerous kind of roughly drawn lines that go around this wreath that's in the center. So I decided that I was going to punch some holes and do some stitching on those lines. I use a simple back stitch and I use all 6 strands of white embroidery thread. And I not only stitched on those lines in the center, but I also put a line of stitching going around the outside of that background paper. For this layout, I used 3 photos of my daughters. For 2 of the photos, I used some of the frames that were in the kit, and for the other photo, I just used a very tiny blue mat, and I attached them all down to a piece of white cardstock so I can move them around as one unit before I attach them down to the background. The title for this layout is going to be Stormville. To make that title, I used some dies that were in my stash, and I cut out the word Stormville 4 times. I cut it out of white 80-pound cardstock 3 times, and then I used a pattern paper to cut it out the final time. For each letter, I glued the 3 layers of white cardstock on top of each other using some gel glue, and then I put the pattern paper letter on the top. Once I had all of the letters glued together, I decided I was going to ink the edges of the title and then also these blue butterflies that are on the top of my mat here. So I'm, again, using some of that Uncharted Mariner. Since Tim Holtz comes out with new colors pretty regularly these days, I'm hoping that at some point he'll come out with a real true teal. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. It would definitely be nice. There were a few more elements that I wanted to add to the page, so I inked the edges of those too. Even though they are not blue, I thought that it would be nice to have the edges inked blue and just kind of help to tie everything on the layout together. Since gel glue dries fairly quickly, I thought that it was safe to ink the edges of the letters of the title. And the word Stormville, it's the name of a town in upstate New York. Each summer, and I guess there are other times during the year too. They have really large flea markets, and we tended to go there quite a bit when my kids were younger. Now it's time to assemble everything together. I have my photos that I have arranged as a unit on the background, and now I'm tucking some of these beautiful peach or coral colored flowers into and around those photos. You may have heard of one of the basic composition principles, which is to have three different elements or groups of elements that create a visual triangle, and it helps to bring focus to whatever falls within that triangle. So I like to follow that sometimes. I don't always, but I thought that this was a perfect layout to have three clusters. I made the clusters of three different sizes. That also helps to bring a little bit of variety and interest to the layout. Although the cluster that's on the top is similar in size to the one that's on the bottom, the one that's on the top is a little tiny bit larger. Although when I started adding the leaves to the clusters, the one on the bottom grew to be a little bit bigger. Now I'm adding those blue butterflies to the layout. I decided to put that large one up on the top, and I like the way the butterflies are three different sizes, although I do end up adding that last butterfly that's off to the right of my mat right now to the layout as well. And that will make a total of 4 butterflies, and that's okay with me. Like I said, I like to use that rule of 3, but I don't always stick to that. Now I'm placing those letters that I made earlier on the bottom of the layout, and I usually arrange those and attach those down off camera just because it takes so long for me to get the letters lined up and spaced correctly. But I'm going to start off by popping up the wings of the butterflies. I love to do this. I just put some foam on the wings, and then I put some adhesive on the foam and then also on the center of the butterfly, and then that helps to make the wings pop up when you press down on the center. It's just a little bit of dimension, but I just think that it adds a lot to the layout. I was thinking that the flowers would stand out a little bit better if I added a darker color to the edges. I love the way I make these decisions when the layout is all assembled, so I had to go back and pick up those flowers and ink the edges. I'm using some Distress ink in Vintage Photo. These are the times that I'm especially glad that I use the ATG adhesive, which is repositionable. I find that because I'm somebody who does make these last minute decisions and these changes, it is nice to have a repositionable adhesive. I attach down that title, and now I'm going to add a couple more little elements to the page. I have these little buttons, and I thought that these would look nice on either side of the title, so I'm popping them up on some foam and inking the edges of them as well. You probably know this, but I am using fun foam to pop up all of the elements on this layout. I love the way the fun foam adds a little bit of dimension to the page. This is not a super dimensional page, but there's just a little bit, just enough to add some interest to it. If you're not familiar, fun foam is something you can get in the kids section of craft stores. They have it without any adhesive, and then I always like to get the kind that has adhesive on one side. I wish they had adhesive available on both sides. That would make scrapbooking even easier. I love to add white elements back into a very colorful page, and I also like to add something to the page that's very delicate when a lot of the elements on the page are a little bit larger. So that's why I feel like I add these little bud branches to my layouts quite often. I die cut these pieces out of a thick white cardstock using dies that I've had in my stash for a very long time, and I don't know that they're made anymore. I probably got them on eBay, which is where I used to get a lot of my dies years ago. But I have noticed that these types of dies are pretty common, and a lot of the major manufacturers create them. I'm tucking these all around those floral clusters. I sometimes use the whole die cut piece, but usually I cut them into smaller pieces because I don't want to add large areas of them. I want to have a lot of small, delicate areas of these little branches. Generally, my layouts are almost complete when I start adding one of my favorite embellishments, which is pearls. I love these self-adhesive pearls. I start out by putting a pearl on the top of each of the butterflies, And now I'm using some strips of adhesive pearls for the rest of the butterflies. That way, for most of the butterflies, the top pearl is a little bit larger, and then the smaller pearls go along the rest of the butterfly. For the butterfly on the bottom, the pearls are the same size pretty much. There's not too much room on that butterfly to add too many pearls. Now, another one of my favorite finishing touches is to add some white splatters to the layout. This is watered down white acrylic paint, and I just love the way this adds kind of a random, more organic look, I guess you could say, to the background. It helps to bring everything on the layout together. I find that if splatters go in places where you don't want them to go, you have a few seconds to wipe them away very carefully and being careful not to disrupt any of the other splatters. But that is the last touch on this layout, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment. For any suggestions that I've received, I really try to incorporate that feedback into my videos. I love making videos, and I just want them to be as useful to you as possible. In the description box, you'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You could check out all of their gorgeous kits there, and you can get a subscription if you are interested. Have a fantastic day, everybody. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.